Hi everyone, it's Miriam with a Y. In the video before this one, I introduced you to the remarkable opaque white craft plastic by Grafix. Now, you may know Grafix as the makers of Duralar, Vellum, shrink film, and other alcohol ink-friendly substrates. This is their brand new release. In the first video, I showed you how this craft plastic performed when I put it up against Yupo paper in 2 head-to-head tests. Now, if you haven't seen that video, make sure you do. The results of the test were striking. You do not want to miss that. I'm linking it for you now at the top and in the video description box below if the link at the top doesn't show up on your device. Now, I ended the first video by saying that the true test of this synthetic paper is to use it to make some art. So, let's do that, shall we? This plastic is available in 4 sizes: 12 by 12 inches, 12 by 24, 18 by 24, and 24 by 36 inches. I'm going to cut myself a piece 8 by 10 inches for this particular painting. I've made a little sketch for myself to map everything out. I just used a regular pencil, and I hope that you're able to see a little bit of what I did. My plan is to paint birch trees or birch-like trees in the snow against a moonlit night sky with a little bit of a pond. And I'm not going to use masking fluid of any kind to keep any of the areas white that I want to have be white later, regardless of what ink I put down first. Now, that would be challenging or near impossible on most other substrates other than like ceramic tile or like white glass or something. But I'm pretty sure I'm going to be just fine with this Grafix white plastic. I'm starting out by putting some inks down for my sky. I've chosen Jacquard Piñata's Sapphire Blue, as well as Keelty Purple Blue and Blue. And I'll blend and spread all of these with a paintbrush and isopropyl alcohol. I'm using 99% alcohol, but 91% would work just fine. If you noticed, I wasn't worried about staining at all, even with the inks down at full strength. With the papers I've used in the past, I'd have to thin my inks down a lot or flood those papers first with a lot of alcohol and then add the drops of full-strength alcohol on top to hopefully not get stains. With this new Grafix plastic, I can put down any ink however I like and manipulate it without having to camouflage stains from where the ink had originally hit the surface. It's kind of cool. Once I'm happy with my sky blend, I clean out the bulk of the ink in my brush, but I leave a little color in it to give my snow a little wash of color. It's night after all in this painting, so I don't want my snow to be like white, you know, like not stark white, even if there is going to be a full moon. So I kind of want it to have a little hint of blue. Now, like with my sky, I'm not concerned about painting right over the trees right now. But what I am doing is making sure that I get those alcohol ink lines, you know, that form when alcohol ink gets those borders. I'm making sure that those lines match up with my pencil marks so that I don't have to worry about the pencil marks showing. Now, if you're new to the channel, take a second to subscribe and click the bell to be notified when new videos come out so that you learn all tips and tricks and techniques as I share them. Okay, next step, putting in the moon. This is going to be a real test of what this paper can let me do. I'm pretty much going to ask it to let me cut a bright white dot through this fairly dark blue. Now my first drop of alcohol looks like what I'd get on photo paper maybe, or other plastics that we're used to. But the next drop shows me the white. That is just so awesome. I fiddle with the moon a bit more, making it bigger, removing the excess ink on the edge. And then I decide I'd like to give it some texture to make it look, I don't know, a little more real. So I pull out Quilty Gray, I thin it down, and using a micro brush, I dot in some craters and shadows and other things you'd really see when you look up at the moon. With that done, I move on to the pond. For that, I'm going to blend a little Pinata Sapphire with my gray. And again, thin that down so that it looks more light and translucent. With the pond too, I'm not worrying about painting right over the trees. I add a few shadows to some of the edges where the snow meets the water to give it a hopefully more 3D appearance. Now that I'm happy with the basic sky, the moon, the pond is okay for me now. I still have finishing work to do on it, but the basic structure is okay, and I'm good with the mounds of snow. It's time to put in our trees, or to cut in our trees. And there are a few options for doing that. You can use a Q-tip in alcohol. I'm not crazy about that option because Q-tips can leave little fibers behind, so it's not my favorite option, but in a pinch, it definitely will do. Another option is to use various size paintbrushes depending on how big of an area you need to take out, and you dip that in alcohol. But if you're using a paintbrush, you really want to make sure that it's not dripping wet, because once you put a dripping wet brush down, the alcohol will bloom and get away from you. So if you're using a brush, it really needs to just be damp. So better to go slowly, a little bit at a time with a damp brush than to try to take out a whole bunch with a wet brush and then ruin your sky or ruin your pond in the process. One of my favorite ways to take out areas is to use a water brush, and I just fill it with alcohol. Water brushes come in all different sizes, and you can spend a lot of money on it or very little money on it. I personally don't think you need to spend a lot of money on something for this task, so I think I got this for like $1 on eBay, and then this was one of a pack of 3 for a couple of dollars at a craft store. So really, no need to spend a lot on these things. And I like these because you get to control how much alcohol is coming out of the brush just by squeezing. The tip doesn't stay dripping wet, it's just damp, so it's really quite perfect for this task. And then for fine details, my other favorite tool is to use blender pens from any alcohol marker line. So I've got a Copic one and a Spectrum Noir one, and these are really good for going in after fine details, and I will be using this later, so you'll see what I mean. My first tool for this is a water brush filled with alcohol. And to make things easier, I'm flipping the painting upside down. Between strokes, I wipe the brush on a scrap piece of paper to discharge it or clean off the ink that it's picking up. Now, like the moon, the first application of the alcohol doesn't make us know that we'll see white. Remember, there's quite a bit of ink to be removed. But after a couple of minutes, the white becomes visible. I am loving this plastic. As I was painting, I was dreaming of things I'll be able to do with it. Let me know in the comments if that's happening for you as you watch this. After the bulk of the ink is removed, I pull out my alcohol blender markers to do some more detail removal, especially on the side of the tree that'll be facing to the right or the moon side of the painting. I'm deciding that that side is getting moonlight. I then use the blenders to better shape where the pond meets the snow. For some added interest, I paint in a few boulders with a fine point paintbrush and some gray. With the same gray ink, I turn to adding depth and shadows to the trees. I love that this plastic let me get to the white because it will really pop against the gray shadows later. I start out by putting down my darker value of gray, so the ink is less thinned down here. I then give that darker wash a rougher, more organic look by just pouncing my slightly wet with alcohol paintbrush repeatedly into the gray bands. That makes them bloom here and there, so it alters their shape and makes it kind of bumpy, so less like a straight line like it was before. And then once that gray is done, I thin it down some more and do the same thing with the lighter gray, but a little bit to the right. This way I have a good transition from the bright white to the darker gray. And then my last painting step is adding some texture to the snow. With the same paintbrush I was using before, I now wet it with a light wash of blue, and I pounce here and there in the snow to give the suggestion of highs and lows in the snow. And then with that done, I can put my inks away. Since this plastic is good for lots of mediums, including pencils, I'm going to do some detail work with a couple of colored pencils. I'm using Prismacolor Premier Black and Dark Brown. I start out by adding some plants poking out of the snow here and there. And then I move on to the trees. Okay, so like I said, these trees are going to be birch-like. I love the dramatic black markings on birch trees and their little black branches. So I'm going to take some creative license here because birches really don't branch out the way I've drawn these trees. They kind of just have one straight main trunk and then lots of little branches that sort of pop off of that one main trunk. These trees are more like sycamores or something. So let's just assume that a sycamore and birch got together and had some babies. And that's what these trees are, okay? Yeah, that's what these are. Okay, all right, yeah. I have fun adding the telltale markings of birch trees to these guys. The pencils work very nicely on this plastic. The plastic feels super smooth, but it grabs on to the lead really well. I'm getting full depth of color from the pencils. Like there's no limitation to what I'm able to get down with the pencils. This is a fun option I wouldn't have if I was painting on tile, for example. I continue to add details here and there and some shadows. More plant life, more branches, until I'm completely happy with this piece. I am a bit over the moon that we have a better option available to us for our alcohol ink work now. For those of you who also make other forms of art, come let us know in my Facebook group how this Grafix opaque white craft plastic works for you with those other mediums too. Like maybe you do watercolor or oil painting. This is a joy for alcohol ink, this plastic. I'm super excited to see what you all create with it. Share this video with all your alcohol inking friends and groups. They really should know about this. And hit the thumbs up to let me know you'd like to see more new product releases and reviews. Thank you all for watching. Get some of this plastic and go let your creative nature shine. See you soon. Bye now.